Hello, squirrels, and welcome back to another episode of Blind Squirrel Talk, famous in a small town. Today's guest is Bob Wagner, fixer of all things except broken hearts. Dr. Bob shares how he discovered the wonderful town of Maysville, Georgia, and he talks about his dreams for the future of Maysville and some ideas to help get us there. We hope you enjoy meeting Bob Wagner. Everybody, thank you for tuning in another episode of Blind Squirrel Talk. I'm Lulu.
I'm Kim.
And this is Dr. Bob. And this is the next part in our series on Famous in a Small Town. And we want to introduce you to somebody that's so dear to all our hearts here in Maysville, Dr. Bob Wagner, who we all love.
We love Bob.
Yes, we do. Now, a lot of people are going to say, okay, Dr. Bob, he's a doctor of what? Should I explain that, or should you?
Yeah, you should. You're the one that came up with it that I'd never heard of before. So since you started it, you fix it.
Okay, I did coin the phrase. And the reason I came up with Dr. Bob, you probably know this, Kim.
I don't know if I've heard it.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay.
I'm not a doctor.
He's
I
not
know.
a doctor. He plays one on TV. He plays one on Blind Squirrel Talk. No, he was always, when I met him, he was always fixing things. Always fixing things. So he fixed it. I call him Dr. Bob, and it stuck. And now everybody in Maysville calls him Dr. Bob.
That reminds me of a book my youngest child used to read called Mr. Fix-It, who always fixed everything, including broken hearts.
And that's Dr. Bob.
Mm-hmm.
That is true.
I don't know if I've ever fixed a broken heart.
Oh, you've always been there when I've called you.
Oh.
And when Kim's called you, and pretty much when anybody in Maysville calls, Dr. Bob comes. That's right. That's right. So tell us, Dr. Bob, how did you end up in Maysbury, Georgia?
Well, I met my wife, and she was very influential. She had a school, and she hired this teacher from another school.
Imagine.
And this other teacher was very good teacher. She's probably the best, most experienced teacher of this kind in the state of Georgia.
I bet she's absolutely amazing and wonderful.
She is. She has actually memorized the whole program that she teaches. And so we all became friends. And then as my wife and I's life was winding down, we wanted to get away from where we was because there were too many people. There was way too many people. So our friend had a piece of property in Lulu, named Lulu. Had a piece named Lulu in Maysville, and we was able to acquire that piece of property, and we built a house here to retire in a laid-back, simple little town, and built a house. And we did do something odd. Is it ended up that we built the house in the middle of a pandemic when there were no subcontractors available and there's no building materials available. And so that made it a little bit difficult to build a house without materials or workers.
But it's a beautiful house. It is.
It turned out nice. And I was able to build a house. My wife enjoyed cooking, so she's got a huge kitchen, and she's got a closet that's larger than the bedroom where we started keeping house at.
And if anybody in Maysville knows Dr. Bob's house, it's the one with the beautiful flagpole in the front, bearing two flags, which are?
Three.
That's right, three.
I have a U.S. flag. My grandson is a Marine, has a Marine flag, and I also have a Don't Tread on Me, a Gadsden flag, because I believe the government has treaded on us enough, and they need to follow the Constitution.
That would seem easy enough, would it not?
Yeah. It's sort of like a lot of other things. If you want to know the rules, read the rules.
Okay. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I didn't want to go to college. Well, I did want to go to college, but my knees told me that I would never play football in college, or that's what the coaches said. So I decided to go into construction, And at the time where we lived, it was a very booming town, and I went into residential construction. And I've done a lot of different things in that. Started off framing houses, and from there, I had my own framing crew, went to a cabinet shop. I was his first employee. We ended up with 22 guys when I left. Left there, came to Gainesville, and went to work in a mill shop. And in the end, I ended up being superintendent of the mill shop. Left that, opened my own mill shop. And from there, I went to remodeling, which I did for the last 20 years. And so a little bit of background in construction, in residential, and really enjoyed the remodeling, and really learned a lot from my variety of other jobs in construction to remodel. And I was able to get a good clientele of people around Gainesville.
Yeah.
In your retirement, it seems as if you've come here and wanted to jump into the community and kind of help with the Downtown Development Authority, aspects of running the library and keeping it safe and legal. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, I came here, and retirement doesn't suit me. After 40 years in construction, my body decided that it told me that I was going to retire from physical labor. But unfortunately for most, but my brain still works a little bit. And I wanted to get involved, and I want to make Maysville a better place. I want to make it more comfortable and more safe. I want to have a place for children, which I looked at the library, and it was struggling in a few things, and I made a few comments on it. And but we need a place for our children. When I was growing up, my father learned that his two sons and daughter, especially his youngest son, had a Wall Street, and he could either provide a place for them at home where he could keep an eye on them, or not wonder where they were at. And if we can have our library for a place for our children where they can be doing something constructive to forward their life, would be a lot better than not knowing where they're at or what they're doing. I was raised very rural, in a strong Christian home, but I wandered about as far away from that as you could go in my life, and found my way back. It's a whole lot easier to tell the truth than to try to remember the lie you told.
Right.
But if we can make Maysville better for our children and make it safer, we don't need to have progress in the name of progress, but we need to have a better place.
Tell me what you'd do to make it a better place.
Well, we need to have the buildings safer. There are a lot of buildings that need attention, and that's a slow process because everybody needs to make a profit. A landlord needs to be able to pay the taxes. And so you have to do things to where it will attract people. You can look at other towns around, and they've done things to make their town more attractive and have people coming in. To have people in Maysville to pay for everything in Maysville is not financially feasible. Mm-hmm. We need to attract other people to come in here and buy stuff and pay taxes and do things to make it to where Maysville can have money. Then we can have simple things like, we got a fantastic park.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful
park. It's very underutilized. Mm-hmm. We have some great places to do things, but there's a few people that does a whole lot, and the more people we can get involved to make Maysville a fun place to be. I don't want it to be a tourist attraction. I don't want a Helen.
Mm-hmm. No.
But I do want people to come here. If we got a nice restaurant, I can remember growing up near Athens, there was a place called Swamp Guinea. It was 15 miles from everywhere. But there would people come from 50 miles away to go there to eat. And you need something that's an attraction and some neat twist that Maysville needs to have. It's got some beautiful homes.
Mm-hmm. We do.
It's got some great looking buildings. And to make it appealing.
And safe. Safe is my big thing.
and there's some things that need to be done to make it a safer thing. I know there's some progress going on, and some sidewalks to get in, and to where you don't have to walk in the streets, and some things to slow up some of the traffic on some of the main highways is being worked on. But progress is slow, and change is hard on all of us. That's the only thing I don't like about change, is change.
Why do you think people are resistant to change?
And I think it's the fear of the unknown. So many things in our life started out as a good idea, but it ended up, if you let the government get involved, they mess up everything. And
Exactly.
and you've got to have the community involved in making a change. And change is slow, because you don't want to jump into something and then find out there's some side effects that you don't know about.
Exactly.
And I think it's fear.
Yeah, fear's a real thing.
But fear will also bite you in the hiney. We've got everything growing up right around us, and we're going to get swallowed up if we don't do something.
And we can either be a part in that and have some input in it, or it's going to grow up anyway. And then we'll be overrun like so many other small towns that are not small towns anymore. Or we can have a part in it, and it's a choice. I'm sure Maysville they've had some major progress in the last 50 years. I don't know anybody that ever complained about the streets being paved, but that was progress.
Right?
I don't know if they complained about having power run to the house,
That was progress.
or city water, or city sewage. All of that was change and progress. But I don't hear anybody complaining about those, or cable TV, or internet. I mean, either you keep up or you get swallowed up.
I agree. Well, what's next on tap for you, Bob?
Well, we moved here. My wife and I moved here as a place to retire, and was in our house for a month. And there was an automobile wreck. I was driving. I walked away, and my wife didn't. After 30 years, and so I built the house for her, and I've had some pretty severe health problems that are clearing up now, and so once that is, I'm gonna fix a little wood shop in my basement and see if I can encourage people to fix up the houses and make them nice. Find the owners and see if we can make all the houses look safe and presentable. And if they want to rent them, fine. If we want to find somebody to come in and move in them, that's fine. But they don't need to be vacant.
And run down and dangerous.
And the vacant houses are a big thing. And there's some abandoned houses, they appear to be abandoned. I don't know if they're not. I don't want to be harsh on any owner, because I know what it's like for people that live in where there's a homeowners association, and that's brutal. That's not what we need. But we need houses that are safe, clean.
So
And
what do you think the answer to that is? Do you feel like code enforcement would help with that? Do you think that's too strong an avenue to go down?
I think that's going to have to be a start. And it's a slow start. If we were to have, and I know there are some codes, but to have a modern code, and it needs to be a slow process. It may need to be written up and give people a year, where normally once it's enforced, you give them a month or
Right.
whatever it is. We might give them a year. And there's all kinds of grants available. And if Maysville had grants to help with, especially in a historic house or historic building of any kind, then the financing would be available. And even if, I don't know how the process works, where if the Downtown Development Authority or the City Council or some other organization had control of a grant, and somebody had a house that was historical and some way to fix it up with some low interest loans, or a building that was a low interest loan to make it better. And it may be as simple as to go to a place like Helen and said, how'd y'all do that?
Right.
Now, I don't want to be a Helen, but there's no way that the people in Helen decided to make it an Alpine Village and, oh, we got all this money and it just fell out of the sky and we redid
Right.
all the buildings. There was something they did. Or look at what Sugar Hill's done. They've got all kinds of stuff going on there. Or Buford.
When I think about our little city, I think about Flowery Branch because honestly, Flowery Branch was just about identical to
I
Maysville.
know, it really was.
I mean,
very
the railroad ran right through it.
And Flowery Branch had, which is where we lived before here, it had a huge Mooney manufacturing made furniture for hotels all over the United States. But when Mr. Mooney passed away and the city was able to acquire that property, and they built a whole new city complex there where Mooney Manufacturing was. And I know everybody there hated to see Mooney Manufacturing go because it was a fixture. It was there from forever.
But what would the option be? Just close the building and leave it sitting there?
Yeah.
I mean,
And it couldn't run without Mr. Mooney because he was probably one of the smartest mill shop men I have ever met in my life.
Aw.
He was an engineer from Georgia Tech, and he found his little niche in the world, and he did well. But there's several other places in Flowery Branch that are very similar. There are other buildings that they've done and improved, and they've still been able to maintain a hometown atmosphere. And then most people go to Flowery Branch and they don't realize that ain't Flowery Branch. That's the exit. You have to go over to the city of Flowery Branch to see the downtown. And Maysville's like that too. Is we got 85 sort of close by.
I think we're in the best location ever. We're so
do
close
too.
to
I do too.
85 to get to Atlanta or Greenville, but we're still here in our little pocket of heaven.
Yeah.
We just need to make it
I
better.
like that.
And-
Pocket of heaven. Yeah.
And we need to, residents don't pay for city services. Need industry to pay for city services. And keep the industry all piled up over in one place away from everybody else. But that's what Flowery Branch and Oakwood have both done is they've got a large center that they've got all the industry and it pays all the bills. Most people don't realize Hawaiian bread's made in Oakwood.
I know. That's amazing and so good.
Yes, it is.
Holy cow.
I love that bread.
And
And they're generous. What a generous company. They've donated to our Downtown Development Authority.
On many
Yeah,
occasions.
and call me still. If you'd ever need anything, call us.
Wow.
and King Hawaiian is actually closer to Flowery Branch than it is Oakwood, but it's in Oakwood.
Wow.
And it's just like some of this stuff, we're so close to commerce, but we need to look at what it takes to get industry to pay the bills. Because all you got to do is make it favorable to them, give them a tax break, and then they bring all kinds of money with them
And jobs.
and jobs.
And jobs.
And
And-
jobs bring people needing lunch,
Yeah, and
which
jobs.
brings restaurants.
And they bring everybody that works there needs clothes. They need food. They
Right.
need a place to eat. They
Bob,
need to
you're
be
so
entertained.
smart. Oh my
Yay.
gosh.
But we need to look at other towns that have made it. I went through Lula the other day. They had a big, it looked like a huge TV screen out there that was just telling people what was going on.
Right.
There's a lot of things happening in Maysville that basically nobody knows is happening because
Right.
there's no way to know.
Right.
And things like the city council meeting needs to be live somewhere. I mean, this technology that was acquired for this, it costs some money. And somebody's come out the wazoo and bought this stuff. But to get people involved in the city, you got to make it easy for them. They're going to do the easiest thing they can be.
Exactly.
But if they could be at home and flip on their computer or if they're fancy enough, program it to where it comes on their TV. They could watch a city council meeting, or they could be involved just out of the and then once you get them interested, then they'll show up.
Right. We've had more attendance at the council meetings than we have had in decades lately.
Yeah.
It's been wonderful.
And we don't need to have an attendance because there's a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have attendance because we all want to get together and do something.
Mm-hmm.
If the city wants it, then that's the direction we need to go. And it takes work. I don't know who did this at these other small towns, but I'm sure that we could take the time and go to a city council meeting and said, who did this?
Mm-hmm. And how?
How'd y'all get this grant?
Mm-hmm.
How did y'all find the money?
Mm-hmm.
How'd y'all make the plan? A long time ago, I went to work in a cabinet shop. I was his first employee ever. I was out of work, and I talked to him at church, and he said, well, come into work Monday. I think we may have a few days to work. And so I went to work for him. He was a deacon in the church. I went to work for him for a week, and on Friday, Gene said, what did we decide to pay you? And I said, I don't know, just this is what I was making. It'll be fine with me. And he said, well, that's not enough. And he actually paid me $1 more than the previous job.
Wow.
But over time, I realized the way he was building cabinets, there was a better way. And I spent nights and weekends. My father was an agricultural statistician, and I developed a better way to lay out cabinets to where it would be more efficient. But I did that on my own time, and we've got to find those people in Maysville that will spend a little bit of their time.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many people, well, I'm not getting paid for that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you want your road paved or not? Do you want your power left on?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like street lights? Well, then we got to do something for that. We're so spoiled to working 8 hours a day, going home, doing whatever you do to relax, go to bed, get up and do the same thing. And then we all pay to be entertained. We'll buy a boat and go to the lake, or we'll go to the beach. But we can be entertained right here if we choose.
Exactly.
We had an excellent lady at the library that did great things for the kids. And that's what we need to do. We need to make it an attractive, safe place for people here.
Exactly. I agree.
And so hopefully we can get there. I grew up, the church was the center of the whole world. That's not the way the world is today.
Mm-hmm.
The world is centered around social media.
Dr. Bob, we are so glad you came to Blind Squirrel Talk, because when you think about Famous in a Small Town, we think about you, and we appreciate you being here today. But real quick before we go, one thing I heard you say was, if the world had more front porch talking, we'd be a better place.
All right. Most of the problems in the world could be solved if we had more front porch sitting. There's a house right next door to me that he has made it very clear that every afternoon he's going to be sitting on his front porch with his beverage relaxing, and that's where the kids need to learn. That's where I learned. I learned shelling butter beans and putting up corn, but you learn from parents and grandparents.
Thank y'all. See you on the next Blind Squirrel Talk.